Hi everyone, this is National Master Dennis Monokroussos, and today we're going to take a look at part 2 of my game with Lou Barcarola, my craziest game ever as presented last week, or at least as presented in the first part last week. What made the game the craziest one ever played was in part my decision very early in the game to sacrifice my queen. So I'm not going to go through everything we've looked at certainly from last week, but just very quickly. I had white. This was against Lou Barcarola, who's a 2170 player, and it was from the Amateur Team Championship in 1999. And like a good team player, I went on an absolutely crazy sacrifice spree right out of the opening. All right, so I mentioned a lot about the opening in the last presentation. So here I just want to show that I sacked the queen for really not enough, but couple of pieces, some excitement. I drag his king out in the open, and various adventures ensue, as you see. So I win the rook, and he gets it. And after all of this stuff here, so again, you'll see all the details if you watch the first show, which if you haven't seen, you absolutely should. And after various exciting things, we reach this position here. Okay, and I kind of offered this position or presented this as a challenge for those of you who are interested to try to analyze this, figure out what in the world is happening here. Actually, okay, made one more move pair. So bishop to c4, b5, and I believe I stopped here. Now, in the game I played the move bishop to b3. Just keeping it on the diagonal. Of course he plays c5. But I don't know if I saw it and rejected it or just didn't even see it. I mean, I think at this point I was still kind of hoping that by normal means I could still get some counterplay. And I saw what happened in the game too, and I was kind of optimistic about it. But yeah, I don't think I looked at DC seriously, but this is actually a very interesting move. And as we'll see, black has to play really accurately not to get into some serious hot water. Alright, so it's a discovered check on the king, so he's got to take my bishop. And now the point is to play rook to d1. And the funny thing is that while before it was kind of important for black to try to get this rook into play here. So he went through this whole little operation to get the rook to the h-file, but now it turns out that the rook is really kind of shut out of play. Now, it's a real shame for me that my king isn't on g2. And there's a whole bunch of lines where if my king was just on the g2 square, I would be in really, really good shape. So his rook would be cut off. There wouldn't be various queen checks or pins, as we'll see in a moment. Well, it'll be a little bit more than a moment now, but a move or two on in the game as it actually occurred. But anyway, my king is on f2, sadly. But still, the fact that his rook is kind of locked out on h8 and his king is in a vulnerable spot on g8 gives me some real chances here. So I think there are maybe 3 plausible tries for black here. All right, so the first pretty obvious way to play is rook h2 check. So you get the rook into the game right away, grab a pawn, and this seems like this should be pretty good. Okay, so rook takes d6. Now my rook is ready to rumble, and here he's got a couple of choices too. So one obvious try is to play the move king f8. So this way he can get his queen into the game. I mean, he can't play something like queen a7 right now. This would obviously be just a catastrophically bad move because he just gets mated in 1. All right, so king to f8 prepares that. Okay, so king to f8, and then here I myself have a choice between a couple of different possibilities. All right, so one idea is to play g5, and this is an idea that's going to recur throughout the game and the analysis. So what I'm trying to do is well, take advantage of the little 3-on-2 majority I've got over on the G and F files, not counting the f3 pawn and his e5 pawn, and just break through. So I want to get a pawn to f6 and then make my g pawn passed, and make some arrows here and get this guy going. So that way the queen has to worry about the rook, the pawn on c6, the knight, and also this g pawn. And it's a lot of stuff for one piece to do, even if it's the queen. And the rook on c2, while it looks active, it's not really relevant to what's going on around black's king. So it would be kind of a race here, and that would be the goal. Alright, so here black's got a couple of possibilities. So one is to just go for counterattack right away with queen to a7. And this looks really dangerous, but the nice thing is that I just win the queen. So rook to d8, rook to d7, can throw in this check first. Now I take, and here I just win. So let's say rook takes b2, hoping to rush the rook back to the back rank to stop all the pawns. But I play this, so it's a nice little interference sacrifice. So when his king's on d8, the rook on b8 won't be able to stop the pawn on g7. Well, it won't be able to stop it when it gets to g8. So that would win. Okay, so that's queen a7. The better move is c3. Okay, but even this, don't remember if you can draw this or not, but this is still pretty tough. But this is the best move. Alright, so b takes e3 is my best. And now queen takes, and rook takes c3. So here, the rook is going to handle my c-pawn, and his king is going to handle this cluster over here. So g takes f6, g takes f6. Okay, now if I try g7, a little tricky business here. So the idea is kind of clever. If king takes, then I play c7, I'm going to queen. And if he takes, then I have knight to e8, check, and I win with the fork. Unfortunately, after g7, he can play king to g8. And now my c6 pawn is going to fall, and then the g7 pawn is going to fall, and black should win here. Okay, but I don't have to play g7 either, so the best move is probably just knight to e4. He takes, and in the position we get here, I don't think black can win. I mean, if he brings his king to g7, which is what we just saw a moment ago, right, so here, I mean, if he plays king g7, well, I'll just do it from here. Don't want to confuse you guys. If he plays king g7 to protect the pawn, I just play knight to g3, and I threaten knight to h5, winning this guy. So his rook has always got to stay behind to guard this pawn, but if his rook is staying behind, then, hey, no problems. He can't go and win my pawns. I just put my king on g4, the knight on e4 or h5, and I can just sit there. So this should be equal. Should be a draw here. Okay, so that was after king f8, g5, c3, so he holds. Another try for me is to play rook to d7, and this introduces some new fun into the position, but again, it looks as if black can just hold here. In fact, actually with queen to b4, I have to force an immediate draw by perpetual check. So rook to d8, king e7, rook d7, and that's it. So that would just be a draw. Alright, so okay, so that was going back here. So that was what happens on king f8. Okay, a second choice that he's got, though, is to play rook takes. Actually, the best move is here is rook takes b2 maybe. Okay, so after rook takes b2, g5. Here we go again. Actually, yeah, sorry, this isn't the best. So actually, his best was, in fact, king f8. So this was the best try for him. And after rook takes b2, g5. Okay, again, familiar idea. Rook's got to run back. G takes f6. And whatever he does, I think I'm just winning here. So let's say queen a7. I'm trying to scrape up a perpetual check. Turns out that there isn't one. So rook to d7. And he keeps checking. And if he checks again, I just play knight to g3. And then I'm going to play c7 and rook to d8. So this is hanging over his head here. So, for example, c3. Well, now actually, instead of c7, rook f8, here I would play rook takes g7, and now rook to b7, now g7, and now this nice little tactic, knight to g5, and incredibly, I seem to just be winning here. So the threat is to play knight f7 check, rook takes f7, c8 queen, and because of the really bad position of black's queen, he can't do anything about it. Well, he can play queen g1, and I play king to h5, and now the problem is that, yeah, he can play queen to c5, but then I'm going to have, I believe, king to g6, and I'm still going to win. So it's really remarkable. I mean, his king is just in such trouble, despite my really limited army. All right. So that was rook to h2 check. Alright, a second idea, and this comes closer for black, is the move queen to a7 check. Alright, and there's a clever kind of idea here. So king to g2, queen to e3, rook takes d6, and now queen to e2 check. And here I have to play knight f2 where I just lose really easily. But now rook h2, and he takes this guy, and he takes this guy. And now here's the key cool idea. Okay, so queen h4, king h3, queen e3 check, king h4, now queen to b6. All right, and it looks all of a sudden as if I'm just losing here. So I have no mate. If I play c7, he just takes the pawn and says thanks. So what does he do? Well, or what do? I just play rook to d7. So this fortunate little tactic holds everything together for me. So now I really am threatening c7. And of course he can't take the pawn because I just checkmate him, rook to d8. So he's got to come back and he's got to come back and give perpetual check. All right. Now this is the red idea though, and so black actually has this amazing resource. I'm sure he wouldn't have seen it, not because he's bad player, just it's really subtle. I mean, this would be really tough to see. This would be a great exercise to see how strong a player someone has to be to find this. So the move here is c3. Alright, now what's the big difference? So why can't I just take the pawn? So b takes c3. Okay, well now we do the same thing. Queen a7, king g2, queen e3, rook takes d6, queen e2, and we saw all this already. And you wonder, well, what in the world is the difference? Well, now, in this position, black plays king to f8. Alright, well, still don't get it. Okay, c7. Doesn't this just win for white? Because if queen c5 or queen c3, so let's say here, rook to d8 check, king e7, c8 queen. And black can still get perpetual, so it's still not winning, but this is obviously just fine and dandy for white. Right, the problem is queen to e1 check. And then I have to play king h3, and now queen takes c3 as check. So that's what c3 made possible. Darn it. So that's horrible. Trust me, I didn't see any of this during the game. But it's a remarkable tactical sequence for black. So c3 in this position is just a really brilliant resource. And I don't think I have anything. If I try, for example, to play b3, well, the difference now is, okay, I've taken that tactic away, but now he can actually play this, rook h2 and rook takes c2. So it's kind of a funny combination where rook to h2 immediately, so in this position, rook h2, king g3, rook c2 didn't do anything because the c pawn just isn't dangerous, so I can just get on with my counterattack. And queen a7 check didn't quite work. But first pushing this pawn and either jettisoning it in the one line or getting it past my b pawn in the other line makes all the difference. So here, for example, rook c1, rook d7, so I keep doing the same sorts of things here. And now whether I play knight d6 or g5, whatever, it doesn't matter. So say knight to d6, g5, knight e8, rook g1, king h4, he queens, and I have nothing. So I'm just dead lost here. So d takes c6 is a really cool idea, but it comes up a whisker short. But practically speaking, it would have been the better move, I think. Alright, well I played bishop to b3, and I had a nice idea in mind with this too. So he played c5, and now it's kind of sad that I can't play knight takes c5 with the obvious point, d takes c6, oops, d takes c6, and then d6, the discovered check, and I pick off the queen. But after knight c5, he plays queen a7, and I've walked into this pin. So again, if my king were on g2, as I mentioned before, life would be good, but it's not, and so life isn't. Alright, but again, I had foreseen this, and I thought it was okay, or at least, I don't know if I thought it was okay, but I thought it was still in there swinging. So c4, just give away more stuff, rook h2, king g3, rook b2, but now I played rook to h1, and here I was kind of excited. So at the cost of a mere pawn, I mean, hey, I've already given away a queen, a bishop, the exchange, I mean, lots of stuff. What's another pawn thrown in? Well, here at the cost of just a pawn, I thought, well, now, heck, I've got this idea of playing g5 and maybe rook h7 first, or maybe f6 first, and then to play the other move. So g5, f takes g5, rook h7, and then f6, and man, I'm blasting through here. So his king is not in good shape. His rook is out of play. So just as in this d takes c6 line that we looked at here before, the rook is kind of out of play on the h-file. Well, here I'm trying to show that it's out of play on b2. So he's given up the h-file, and now I want to use it. So I thought I really had something going here. So for example, if black plays something like queen of d8 with the idea of maybe trying to circulate in via the dark squares, okay, well then I play g5, f takes g5, rook h7 as advertised, b takes c4. He's threatening my bishop, so of course I have to do something about it. I play f6. Who cares about the bishop? All right, well now the threats are really starting to mount here. The most obvious one is f7 and then rook h8, so that I win the queen and I promote the f-pawn. So he's got to take. Now bishop to a4 is a good move. This time I am going to save the thing. All right, let's say queen f8. It's actually forced. And now bishop to e8. So terrific move there. He can't take it because knight f6 check. And I win the queen, and other good things will happen as well. Yeah, actually, I'll play knight f6, and then on king f8, I can either play rook h8 or even better, probably g7. So all kinds of nice stuff there. So let's say queen of g7 is probably his best try. Bishop f7, king f8. Swap these guys. Knight takes d6. So it's still kind of exciting because he gets the pawn to c3 here. And I can't queen my g-pawn yet because the bishop's going to hang. So knight f5, king f8, and g7 would just be a blunder because he would simply take my bishop. So that's no good. So I would play d6 here, run this pawn up the board. And so the key thing is, okay, if he plays c2, what do I do here? d7, maybe. Rook to b8, covers the back rank. And now I think I just play bishop to e6. It looks like that should work. c1 queen, g7 mate. That would have been a great way to finish the game. Unfortunately, this didn't happen, but it would have been a lot of fun. All right, so another try after d6 instead of playing c2 is to play rook to b7. Okay, so now bishop to d5. So again, kind of taking a really pretty cavalier attitude towards material. So black can play c2. Who cares? Bishop takes b7. He queens. I check, and I'm going to make a queen too, but the difference is that when I queen, I'm going to give mate. So king f7, check, queen, and I track him down and kill him on c8. So after bishop to d5, he's got to save his rook. Rook to d7. But now bishop to e4, and I stop him from promoting. Rook to d8, king g4, and I'm just going to wiggle my king in, and this is going to win. So then I'll play g7, and life will be good. All right, so this would win for me. And this is the kind of thing that I was hoping for. As we scroll back, okay, so after queen d8, g5, and I'm good to go. But my opponent played a really good move here. Played rook to e2, and the idea was that after g5, he plays rook takes e4. So now that beautiful, majestic knight of mine is gone. So I've gotten rid of some material, and that's good, some of his material. But still, you know, it's I'm still down. So I've made some progress. I've come almost all the way back on the in the body count, but I'm still not quite there. And after king g4, which is what I played, he played queen of d8, and you know, I'm still kind of worried because, I mean, first of all, this bishop on b3 is just a pawn. I mean, it's a tall pawn. Now, there are some lines where it actually does show back up. It resumes bishophood. It assumes the mantle of a full piece again at some point. But for now, it's a pretty lame-looking piece. And the h-file, I have no entry. I can't get to the back rank. And, you know, what do I do? Am I going to attack with the king or something? Well, maybe. Stay tuned. But meanwhile, I've got to worry about his queen bouncing in a5, d2, f4, and just devouring every pawn in sight. So what do I do here? Well, here actually, I mean, I came up with a pretty straightforward and pretty deep plan. Well, I think maybe this move I played fairly quickly, and then after this move, I came up with the deep, long tactical idea. But here actually maybe it's another place where I might be able to improve. Because after rook to h7, which is what I played, there were some lines where I ended up bringing my rook back to the to my side of the board. So a couple of other possibilities are worth a quick look. So one is to play rook to h2. So just a waiting move, trying to cover some useful squares on my side of the board, like d2, so his queen can't get there. And when he plays queen a5, okay, I'll play f6, and my rook is better placed for defense. All right, it turns out, though, that this isn't going to work as well as I'd like. So we'll still see the idea, and this is the idea that I come up with in the game. So gf, king f5, queen e1, king e6. So I don't want the f pawn, so that's key. All right, this guy, taking this doesn't help me at all. It doesn't create any new passed pawns for me. It doesn't create any mating threats. So it's just nothing. This is the guy that I need to take. So this d6 pawn, so that way this pawn on d5 can become a runner, and maybe there will be lines where I play c takes b5, and the bishop comes into the game again. So that's the goal. That's my big plan here. All right, so king e6, g4, king takes d6, g3, rook g2. All right, b takes c4, so let's get rid of some more guys. And now, if I play bishop takes c4, he plays queen takes e4, and really here I just don't have any chance. So I'm just too late. He's got this double attack. I can't really afford to sack either piece, but if I play something like bishop to f1, then I can just take here if nothing else, and my d pawn can't do it by itself. So this should just be a pretty easy loss. All right, so the better thing to play is bishop to a4. Again, getting the bishop into place. So now the bishop may come to e8 and f7, or d7 and e6, something like this. I'm just a little too late, though, still. So c3, king e7, queen takes e4, rook takes g3, queen a4, d6, c4, d7, queen b4. It's close, but not quite. So one kind of sad thing to notice is that if I play king to e8, which would normally be the preferential option, he has queen to f8 mate. So king to e6, check, check, plays here. And if king to e7, well, I'm just walking into a self-pin. So let's say rook takes e3, now e4. He's threatening queen e5 mate. And he's got everything pretty well stopped here. So it's kind of a pity for me, but it's close, but no cigar. All right, so again, king g4, queen d8. So I just mentioned rook to h2 is a possibility. A second really cool idea is bishop to d1. Now this move is actually really surprisingly interesting. And the point is, again, it's to try to get the bishop, well, threefold. So one is that it keeps the rook on towards the bottom of the board where it's going to be useful defensively, and maybe h1 is even the best square. So that's one point. Second point is, again, it's the waiting move to get the wait for black's queen to go to a5, and then I do my f6 business. But the third idea is that once I've moved my king and play f6, the bishop on d1, well, the only bishop, is going to come into play via g4 and then maybe e6. So I'm giving myself some new, exciting attacking possibilities here. All right, so let's have a look. Queen a5, f6, g takes f6, cb, might as well take it this time, ab, king f5. Okay, and now, for example, if black plays queen takes a2, bishop g4, and here he's already in trouble. So let's say he plays queen to g2. Okay, now rook to h7, b4, rook to d7, and here the threat is to play king takes f6, and if he takes the bishop, rook to d8 is mate. So he's got to be careful. So if, for example, b3, king takes f6, I just win. I mean, he's got a check, but it's meaningless. So queen f2, bishop f5, no more checks from him that are good, but I get my mate next move. Well, we're in two if he sacks his queen. All right, so he should play queen f2 check right away. King e6. Now let's say c4. Okay, I play rook to b7, c3, king d6, and now I'm threatening mate again with bishop to e6, followed by g7, and then g8 queen is either going to be mate or will be mate in one move after that. If his king is on h6, I'll play rook to h7 mate. So f5, bishop takes, queen takes, e takes, c2. Okay, so now I can't stop his pawns, but I don't have to because I made him f6, queen, check, and mate. Alright, so that's big fun there. Unfortunately, black can thwart this whole thing too. So in this position after bishop to g4, okay, so we already looked at this, I think. We can also try queen to a8. Okay, so now rook to h7, queen d8, king e6, bishop f5, g7, and so now the idea is to play rook h8. Okay, but this kind of puts the fun at an end here. I mean, if I play something like bishop to e6, he just takes the rook, and then I take the queen, he takes the pawn, and then I can't stop him from queening. So I guess I should show you this. Alright, so bishop to e6. King takes. So I don't want to play queen takes e6, because then my e-pawn would be dangerous. So this, and no way to stop him from scoring a touchdown. And let's just see really quickly if king to e7 has any hope. I don't think it does, but might as well look. Doesn't hurt. Okay, well here I think just queen to c7. No, we don't. No, that's silly. Queen c5 check. Okay, if king to e8, queen f8's mate. King to d8 would block the pawn. And if king to e6, then okay, well one simple way to handle this, actually there's just a whole bunch, but alright, this isn't the best way, but it's kind of a cute way. So queen to c4, king d6, queen to, oops, sorry, that was, actually that'll work too. The line I had in mind was queen f7, d8 queen, and then queen f8 check, and you just trade queens and win with all the extra pawns. Alright, so yeah, so here can't play bishop to e6, but rook to h3 is okay. Now threatening bishop to e6, c2, rook c3, king g7, rook c2, and I think black is probably winning, but it's not easy. I mean, white can definitely resist here. So practically speaking, at least, I mean, maybe in reality too, but at least practically speaking, my chances would still be alright here. Okay, so all of this was really fun. So that was bishop to d1, queen a5, f6. Alright, but now, unfortunately, black has a good move. So he can play queen to d2. And this thwarts the whole plan, because now I can't play bishop to g4. Oops. Bishop to g4, queen f4 check, and I just lose the bishop, and any counterplay that my king is going to scrape up will be way too slow. Alright, so I should play something like king f6, but queen g2, rook h7, and now queen f1. I lose the bishop, and again, my counterplay is too slow. So all that to say that after queen d8, even bishop to d1, which is a really well-motivated idea, isn't quite good enough, objectively speaking. But I'm sure if I knew all the analysis of all of these positions, I probably would have played bishop to d1, maybe. But anyway, as I said, I had a plan. So rook h7, queen a5. Okay, and now from here I calculated about the next 10 moves, and I thought I was at least getting a draw, but we'll see if I was right or not. Just because it was a long calculation doesn't mean it was accurate. Okay, so f6, g takes f6, king f5, queen d2, king e6, g4, king takes d6. So proud of myself here. I thought, man, this is such a great idea. g3. Okay, rook h1. Now, actually, here too, I had other possibilities. So it was funny. A few moves ago, I criticized myself, or at least called in question, the idea of bringing the rook up to h7. Now, kind of ironically, I think it's worth calling into question this retreat back to h1. So there are a couple other possibilities that are worth a look. Alright, so the first one is king to e7. So we're just kind of closing in here for the kill. We want to play d6, and c takes b5, and hey, that's going to be checkmate. But obviously black gets to be awake and make good moves too. So king to e7, g2, d6, and now if he queens, c takes b5, and it's mate in 2. So all black can do is throw his c-pawn in the way and his original queen in the way, but I just keep taking him and I give checkmate. But unfortunately, black doesn't have to be a victim. He can play queen to d4, d7, and now b4. So very good move. keeping my bishop out of play. So I make a queen, he takes, he makes a second queen, and realistically, again, he should be winning, especially since my g-pawn is a goner. So with that, not really surviving, and my bishop not being of any immediate use anyway, I've got to be losing here. Okay, so king to e7 after g3 isn't the solution, but king to c7 is remarkably tough. Alright, so g2, d6, and now we've got some fun here. Alright, so if, for example, he plays b4, which looks really logical, shutting the bishop from b3 out of the game, well, I can actually play the amazing bishop to a4. So this is really fantastic. He queens, I play bishop to e8, and I'm threatening, well, it's not actually clear what I'm threatening here, but it's very difficult for him to make progress. So I'm at least threatening perpetual check, and maybe more, as we'll see. Alright, so if, for example, he plays queen g to d4, loading up on my poor d-pawn, well, then I play bishop to f7, and bishop to d5, and now black is completely lost. So he has no good defense to the dual threats of g7 and d7. So I would just win here. Incredible. Okay, second possibility is if he plays something like f5 with the idea of following up with queen g to g5. So he's overprotecting d8, and he's trying to get into f6 and hitting my pawn on f5. So it looks really useful. But again, incredibly, after bishop f7 and bishop to d5, black is just lost here. So it's kind of stupendous, but true. Alright, so if, for example, he plays queen f6, d7, queen g to d5, queen d to g5, not every day you get to say that. Rook f7, takes, and this is just hopeless. So queen e7, king c8, and I promote, and I'm just up a ton, and my kingside pawns are going to win. Okay, another try is queen takes a2, so trying to sneak in the side door here. But even against this, I've got something. So rook f7, and he can't play king to e8 because d7 is mate, so he's got to go over there. And now king to c8, so just a quiet move. And the cool point, okay, queen to a5. I play this little interference move with f6, so he's not controlling d8 anymore. And he's really got nothing better than just queen takes f6, then I check. And here, his pawn stopped, mine isn't. So I'm gonna queen, and I'm gonna be a rook and a bishop ahead at the end of the day. So completely winning position. What else? Okay, so the third line is to play, instead of queen d to d4, or instead of f5, to play queen g to g5. So just keeping all of his guys here. Alright, and here I think all I found was a draw. So bishop to f7 check, king to f8, d7, and now b3, very good move. Kind of like c3, or in that earlier variation, it has a clearance idea. Alright, so b3, king to c8, and now, again, since the pawn lives, he has queen takes d7, king takes d7, b takes a2, so that was the other point. So just as again in the other variation, if the pawn lives, something good happens. If it dies, something good happens. And here I have to take perpetual. But the amazing thing is that in this position, if he doesn't play queen takes d7, but tries to play queen to g4, tries to keep everybody, again bishop to d5 is winning. So queen takes d5, c takes d5, ba, rook h1, a1 queen, takes, and king e7. So it looks like black should be winning here, since he's rounding up my pawn, but not quite. d6, king takes d6, rook d1, king c6. Now another ridiculous move, rook to d5, queen e6, g7. And it seems brutally unfair, but white actually wins here too. So queen g4, g8, and I queen that one, and then this is just a routine win. So unfortunately, again, black had the one drawing variation. But it gets worse. So if we go back to, okay, so we start off with king c7, g2, d6. All right, instead of b4, which had the idea of, again, shutting the bishop out of play, but falling to bishop a4, black should play queen to a5 check first. And the point is just that after king c8, b4, now my bishop does not get into play. And without this bishop, I don't have enough stuff to quite make it work. So d7, he queens, I queen, he swaps, and he takes on g6. And again, he's winning. So I think we saw a variation really an awful lot like this earlier. Let me see if this was it. Yeah, actually very similar, except this is a tempo better for black. All right, so all that to say that after g3, okay, king e7 was an easy win for black, relatively easy. King c7 was a tough win for black. And there's the move that I played. So I played rook to h1. Okay, so some of you will be relieved to know that the morass of really complicated variations is over, and so now it's just all storytelling and entertainment. I think the variations were really entertaining, but in case you feel a little overwhelmed by them, now you can relax. Okay, so g2, rook to b1, queen to d4, so he's threatening both the queen and to take my c-pawn. I had seen this and prepared for it. King e7, queen takes e4. Okay, so he's hitting my rook with tempo, and he picked up another pawn. Rook g1. At least now I'm threatening his g-pawn, so you can't really just threaten my rook for free. All right, they played b takes e4. Again, I saw this. d6, c takes b3, and d7. Okay, so this is pretty much what I had planned back here when I played f6. Believe it or not, it's true. So I calculated all the way to this point and thought I should be okay. So I figured, okay, he's got to stop me from queening, and I can take his b pawn, so I don't have to worry about him queening right away, and I can play rook takes g2, and that lets me keep my g6 pawn. And even if he pins me, I can just play king to e8 and unpin too. So I should be all right. And it feels like I should be all right. And certainly I felt much relief at this point. Plus my opponent was in time pressure, and just the whole thing. I mean, I figured, this guy's got to fall apart. I mean, between the time pressure and all the really cool ideas, and he's just had to defend for so long, something bad's got to happen to him. But he played like a genius. I mean, he just kept holding on and making logical moves and survived the time trouble. I mean, it was incredible. So he plays queen to b7, which is forced. All right, so now I don't want to allow him. I thought about something like king to e8, but I figured, okay, if I do this, maybe he just takes my a pawn, or maybe he plays b2, probably even better. So b2. I'm sorry, can't do that. Queen takes d7. Let's get this right here. King d7, b2, and I'm trying to remember if I looked at this. I mean, I did look at this. I'm trying to remember how well I calculated it. This should work though, I think. But maybe there's some kind of ready maneuver, some kind of half thinking here. So the idea is, okay, I'm just going to push this all the way down. Whenever he takes this guy, I queen, and his king is of course too slow to catch this. On the other hand, maybe he could try for mate. So he can maybe try to play something like king e7, king takes f6, rook d1, rook d8. But if he plays king e7, I play king g7, I stop it. Or if he plays king d6, well, I play c4. Right, so you can kind of see where I'm going with this, with the ready maneuver idea. So instead, you should split the difference and play king to e6. All right, so let's count this out though, because maybe it's fine. Anyway, the idea is, okay, if king g7, king d5, and maybe he's all right. Maybe he stops everything. Okay, but the key variation would be c4, king takes f6, c3. Yeah, just in time by one move. How about that? So c2, rook d8 mate. So I'll have to think about this some more. Let's see. It's a pretty cool variation. So king e6. Okay. Yeah, king g7, king d5, and all is well. Well, that's actually a very interesting line. So let's see. So king to e8. Queen to b8 doesn't make any difference. That just takes a move longer to get to the same thing. Yeah, maybe this is okay. I'll have to actually think about this some more. But maybe this is the magic saving move for me. Not sure about this. I suspect it probably isn't, but at any rate, I've got an interesting idea there that I hadn't looked at. All right. Well, in the game I played A takes B3, and I thought this should be fine too. Okay, so he played King to G7. He still has 9 more moves to make it to the time control. He was, I think, well under a minute at this point. So I played King E8, threatening a queen. He plays Queen C6, played King E7, Queen B7, and at this point again, I was just, I had kind of said, all right, reconcile myself to the draw. I was kind of hoping that I was going to be winning actually with that whole king raid. But I thought, all right, well, okay, draw's all right. My team wins the match. Everything's all right. So, okay, King E8, and I just kind of waited for the repetition. And instead, he shot out the move, King takes G6. And, this was one of those, oh my, what moments, where you turn red and you start kind of muttering under your breath. Because I realized finally that after the obviously planned D8 queen success, I finally get a queen back. He'd have Queen F7 mate. So this was really upsetting. So I just kind of thought, well, all right, more spare parts. I knew this rook would come in handy someday. So I played rook takes G2 check. And obviously he has to take the rook, because if he doesn't, then there's no Queen F7 mate. So Queen G2, D8 queen, and all right. Queen endings can be challenging sometimes, but when you're 3 pawns ahead and the other guy has no real perpetual chances, then it's just a walk in the park. But he still has 4 moves to make, or I guess 5 moves to make at this moment, and so I figured, all right, I at least owe it to my team to make it to the time control, see what happens. All right, so he plays Queen C6, King F8, Queen B5. All right, I was a little happier. I got to play Queen to D5. My queen's well centralized now. Maybe I'll have some perpetual check possibilities. So he plays Queen to B8, play King E7, Queen C7, King E8, Queen C8. Okay, that's move 50. So, I'm busted, and I'm down 3 pawns. But at least my queen's still kind of well placed. King E7, I'm threatening Queen F7 check. Maybe Queen G2 check is perpetual, or, at least scary enough. So, at least I got a little hope. All right, so he plays Queen C7, which is a good move. Played King E8. And now he plays F5. So I've got no perpetual. If I play something like Queen to G2, then he just plays King F6, and I'm out of checks. If I play Queen to E6, he plays King G5, and plays here, and all right, I've got a few checks. Well, okay, I've got a couple of checks maybe. All right, so here, for example, I'm just going to get mated, so much for perpetual check. But just in general, I realized, okay, I've got no perpetual. So this is all really sad here. And so, okay, it's kind of desperation time. What do I do? Well, I had one last idea. And so I just kind of, with as bored a face as I could muster, kind of keep the hangdog look, I played B4. And, what does this threaten? So it doesn't seem to threaten anything. So my opponent took it. And in this position, my opponent maybe was possibly alert to the stalemate idea, but probably thought something like this. Well, okay, if I play Queen G2 check, King F6, Queen G7 check, well, maybe that's kind of clever, because King takes G7 is stalemate. But Queen takes G7, no stalemate, he simply wins, because I can play King to D8 now. So probably my opponent saw this move and thought that, he probably saw this idea and thought that was my idea with B4. Unfortunately for him and for his team, but not for mine. This is the biggest relief of my life. So 48 moves after sacrificing my first queen, I play Queen to D6 check. What a move! So I got to be a hero, or at least avoid being a goat. And, it's just a perfect culmination of the game. After all these sacrifices, it's like, depending on how you count them up, 10, 12 sacrifices. And, here I get to finally sacrifice a second queen. So not one, but 2 queens give their lives here. After queen takes d6, it's stalemate. I drew the game, we won the match, and I got to play the game of my life here, or at least the craziest game of my life. Definitely, ranks on the short list of the most fun and certainly the most exciting games I've ever played. So I hope all of you enjoyed it. It was a bit of a long show, I know, but hopefully you'll deem it worthwhile, and